Hey everybody, it's Master Gallengeist here, bringing you my review of the latest episode of Supernatural, Don't Go in the Woods. And this was a pretty good episode. The main bulk of it for the A storyline was focusing on this hunt with this monster, Kahunta, which I hadn't really heard of before and I really liked what they did with it. And then the B storyline, which took up a lot less time, was involving Jack. Granted, I have less issues with what was going on with Jack in that it was just condensed and kind of how they went with it. But overall, this was a pretty decent episode and kind of got our regular thing going on with Sam and Dean with their hunting mode. I was like, thank God that worked out pretty well. So the episode starts off and we see that two teenagers are making out, and then of course we hear whistling going on. It's like, what the hell's going on? But of course we're diverted first because the guy's father, who's a sheriff, comes in and says, like, what are you kids doing out here? Trying to make sure that his son's okay and all that. And his parents have split up and everything, and he just decided to go out with his girlfriend and make out in the woods, pretty much. And his girlfriend goes into the restroom, and of course she's like hunting for stalls and finds one, and then monster comes and grabs her. And they're going around, and the sheriff guy sees the monster's like, what the hell is that? But of course his son finds her, and she's dead, and that's how he gets set off. We then come into the bunker, and of course Sam isn't really taking the time that he really needs, and instead found the case that we saw, and just funny bantering back and forth between Sam and Dean. Dean being like, yeah, and looking up any naked stuff on there, and he's like, there's more stuff on the internet than naked people. And he's like, not on my internet. It was just a good little banter back and forth before Sam digs into, shows what he had found, that there's a lot of people that have been going missing over a vast stretch of time. It's like, okay, yeah, sounds pretty good. Then we find out that Cass has decided to go off on his own, and they kind of want to leave Jack here because they don't want to get him into a situation where he might have to use his powers since he acquired them, and they kind of want to ease him in slowly. Of course, giving him kind of just usual errands that you'd give a kid when you leave him alone. It's like, why is beer on here twice? He's like, yeah, because it's that important. And he's like, okay, yeah. And I love the Mission Impossible thing that Dean did. He's like, your mission, should you choose to accept it. It just, I was like, okay, it's really weird because this usual kind of back and forth hasn't happened in the last couple of episodes. It just seemed like somebody got into a groove back into the old kind of Winchester way, and I'm like, oh, okay, this is working out pretty well. And it's really odd when you're watching, it's like, oh, okay, and then you're in the back of your mind, you're like, what? Okay, this hasn't been happening for a while, so alright. So Jack is left on his own, and that of course dovetails to the B storyline, but we'll deal with the A storyline first. They go off, they talk with the sheriff dude, and he's like, well, do I have a choice to let you examine the body? He's like, not really. And they go and they see, and the body's kind of different than what they've been doing before, because there seem to be burn marks with the bite marks as well. And they go off, they kind of start searching and everything, and of course Sam's able to bring up the Kahunta, and that it's this Native American kind of folk legend, and the reason it's got the burn marks is because of like the stomach acid that comes up, because they're usually starving creatures, and that's why it's going on like that. And Dean, of course, takes to calling it Hot Lips, which I was like, there's a lot of kind of good references going throughout this episode. I'm like, yep, that's kind of messed up, as we see this other group, this pairing going off in the woods alone, and they did a really good job with, like, scanning the woods. You see the monster and everything, and of course you're like, oh god, there it is, but they don't see it. It's like, holy crap. So we get another death. They go off. The sheriff dude is trying to wrangle the situation. His son is feeling guilty because they decided to tell his girlfriend's parents that she was killed by like rabid coyotes. The sheriff father is trying to make it pretty much like, okay, rabid coyotes and stuff, even though he saw what the monster was, and he's trying to get a handle on it to close off the woods and everything. But of course, he's even trying to force that Sam and Dean They're like, okay, whatever, we'll say that we're going to stay out of here, but we'll come back later. And of course, they're going around at night, but of course, the sheriff goes up, you're not supposed to be in here, but we get a nice switcheroo, and he's able to talk about what was going on. The local legend about like this family, the Parker cabin, which is where everything's kind of been based around that Donner Party situation kind of effect took a hold, and the son, Henry, was the only one left, but he did the cannibalism and was even hungrier more and attacking people, and so the Native Americans at that time took him and pretty much cursed him to always be hungry, and if he didn't get anything to eat, that he would starve to death. And of course, that was their whole kind of thing. This was supposed to be an extreme punishment for him, so they're like, okay, make off these boundaries, just keep him planted on these woods, he'll starve out and he'll be good, and all that. Of course, this has taken such a long time that people have forgotten about it, and so random stupid people have been wandering in and pretty much feeding this damn thing, and that's what he's been trying to do. And he's like, I didn't believe it at first. I'm like, yeah. And of course, this brings up the whole effect of like, you guys know about these monsters, why don't you tell people? And it was kind of cool seeing that he's like, no, it wouldn't help, and people would still die. Sam, of course, is we see that he's kind of wrestling with that thought and everything. It's like, maybe we could get some kind of different kind of movement on this front, because it would be interesting to see the story take a kind of different kind of approach, because they're usually locked in a stalemate of the status quo kind of thing. They can't really wipe out all the monsters, but if they did have the ability to do that, would that be the kind of right decision? Almost to an effect of what would happen if everybody knew about monsters, but you then brought it into different laws and effects, and you would have it be like, okay, werewolves and vampires could go around and everything, but they have to do these certain ways, and you bring hunters kind of in as a new law enforcement technique to take care of the outliers, kind of similar to when you have profilers going after serial killers. That'd be an actually interesting kind of thing for them to kind of take and kind of evolve it, to either see how that would work or how that would really fucking go wrong, and see how, like, certain monsters could get in positions of power and just go completely crazy, or humans doing the same kind of thing against monsters. But that's just me. That would have been an interesting kind of avenue to travel at some point in this show. So they figure out that the son, he calls the father and like, no, I'm going to try and go in and try and kill whatever took out my girlfriend. So we then go into like one of the best parts of the episode, because it's crazy. I've been talking about how there's been certain episodes that have just not been very well done cinematography-wise. This actually works pretty well, because the son gets to the cabin and we see the monster, and then he just like kind of blasts him through the door, and then he's like on the opposite end of the room, and the way the monster just shuffles up, it's just an effective use of the CGI and the effects budget that they have. It's just creepy and like, holy shit. Of course, he's getting ready to try and eat him. We see the acid coming out of his mouth and everything. It's like, holy shit. And before this had to come into effect, the sheriff had talked about how this kind of creature can be killed with a silver knife to the heart. It was like, yeah, that's your usual kind of spiel. That works out pretty well. I got no beef with that. Of course, we then see that the sheriff comes in. He gets the kahunta off his son, but he gets bit, and he's kind of wrestling with it. And Sam's got the knife. He gets kind of screwed over, and Dean's able to pick up the knife. He kind of works with the dad, kind of brings the kahunta out, and of course, the sheriff is the one to stab him in the heart with the knife, and he then puddles as Dean goes like, wow, that dude went full Raiders pretty much. And he's like disgusted, but also kind of like, that was a cool moment. And it wasn't really a chintzy kind of effect for it. It worked, and I'm like, wow, character design, it was just creepy looking kind of tree man kind of shit going on with him, and it's just like, wow, okay. His son, of course, he doesn't tell the truth about the monsters and everything, too. And he's like, I'll just have to try and figure out how to deal with this. Of course, we then get Sam and Dean going back, and like talking about how their dad would they handle these things and everything. You're like, yeah, I'm kind of glad that he would tell us the truth and everything like that about what was going on. But like Sam's like, listen, we never told him the truth. We just said that we were fine, and we really weren't. That, of course, comes into later with Jack's portion. Now, Jack's portion. The main issues I had with this is that it brought back the three teenagers that had been seen in the previous episode where their father was brought back and time was going all crazy and everything. Because he went out to the store to kind of get stuff, but of course it was closed, and evidently those three were in charge of the store, or at least one of them was. And how we are trying to explore Jack's soul. Because, in effect, they pretty much almost chalk it up to more brain damage than soul damage. I say that because he acts more like he did in the beginning, like kind of the stuff that he had learned was unlearned, which doesn't make any sense, because when we saw Sam without his soul, he still had the knowledge that he had. He just didn't give a shit about how his actions were done. If he could achieve his goal, he would achieve it. That's why it was kind of strange with what was going on here. He's like going in, talking about the monsters and everything like that. He was like reading stuff about like the Haitian code about zombies and all of that, and talking to the teenage guy about it because he was really into ghost facers and all that. That was a nice little tidbit that we saw. They're pulling back up to the store to open it up, and he's like watching ghost facers videos. It's like, okay. But they invite him to come hang out with them. He's like, oh, okay, yeah. Of course, he couldn't get the beer as well because they carded him. He's like, oh, okay, yeah, I'm 22, but he doesn't have the ID, but yet he would use it for like hunting purposes. It was really weird, kind of going back to how he's talking about how he doesn't like to lie because it makes his tummy hurt. I'm like, okay. I also think that because of how condensed this was, that is another issue of why it wasn't allowed to breathe as much with trying to show how different Jack is without whatever portion of his soul he's got. So he goes and hangs out with them, brings a lot of books for the one guy to read, and decides to show him the Angel Blade and all that, trying to show him how he's like killed demons and all that. But of course it's not working out, and they're kind of like, yeah, sure, whatever, we believe you and all that. But then he starts using his powers and like using his telekinesis mainly. And they're like, oh, that's kind of cool. But then he's like going overboard with it. Well, not even really overboard. This at least factors more into the part of the soul bit where he's like using it and says, oh, don't worry, I've got complete control of this thing, making it go all around him and everything. Of course, the dark-haired teenage girl decides to freak out and tries to bolt. And I'm like, you're adding another variable into that effect for him to try and do, and of course she gets stabbed. And then of course everybody's freaking out, he decides to heal, and then they're like, we're not friends with you anymore. It's kind of rare to the effect when I'm like, I wish Jack had gone, not dark, because I don't think they're taking him into a dark place, more of a no-nonsense kind of approach. Maybe not that much dissimilar from the Apocalypse World Michael. He just went complete full-on crazy, but you could see that this would have been the beginning of it if you're just like, oh, okay. You're like, oh, instead, you'd like to let the girl die and be like, oh, your friend's dead. Oh, you guys are going to be sad. I might as well kill you guys as well. And then annihilated all the teenagers. I've got no beef with well, the actors are so-so, but they're given completely crap material to work with, and I'm just like, you're just being used as a plot device MacGuffin stuff at this point for Jack. It's like, no. Ugh. So, of course, he's trying to understand why they're freaking out, and I guess that fits more in the line of his whole thing. It's like, hey, something bad happened, I was able to fix it, nothing truly horrible happened. What's going on? And his rationale isn't really that bad if you think about it. Because he was only using his powers mainly as a way to show off, but I think it was also like trying to make sure he could still do everything he could. And the thing is, somebody got hurt, he was able to fix it. if you're going by that, yeah, there's shouldn't be any beef, but they're like, dude, you freaking stabbed somebody. And then you were able to bring him back. Of course, that would freaking scare him out. And of course, Jack, with his diminished soul, probably doesn't get that nuance as well. Even if he had his full soul, it takes some time to get to that nuance. But of course, that's kind of where that's left off. He goes back to the bunker, and Sam and Dean talk to him about what happened and say that the truth is that they didn't want him using his powers, getting into a situation. He's like, yeah, okay, I won't use my powers anymore without your permission. And that kind of fits into what he's learned. He's like, okay, I have to work up to using this and everything. And he says that nothing pretty much had happened while they were going on. It's like, yeah, he's just doing the same thing to Sam and Dean that Sam and Dean had done to their father, John, saying everything's fine when everything really isn't fine. And that's where the episode leaves off. I'm interested to kind of see where this is going to go. I just don't want those teenagers brought back. If any point for their deaths would have served a purpose, it would have been at this point. And having Jack come to really would have been interesting to be like, hey, I could find some demons or whatnot and show you how we can take care of these guys or whatnot. Like, oh, you don't believe me? And then they all get killed or something like that. Or one of them gets killed or one of them gets possessed and he has to do something. Now, granted, that would have been a whole episode that needed to be devoted to that. But then it would have been better use of the characters because then their deaths would have meant something furthering Jack's character development. Here, it's so truncated, it does develop his character, but not to the point that I kind of would have liked. It's just more like the same kind of thing of like, oh, we've already gotten to this point where Jack has used his powers and hurt someone. It's just kind of the same old thing. It's not that next kind of step that I would have liked for it to take. Though, with his relationship with Sam and Dean and kind of hiding it, unless we've got... I say hiding it, but the way his soul's kind of working out, I don't think he's really hiding it. He really can believe that it means nothing. He kind of made friends with these people, now they aren't his friends anymore, so nothing's really been gained or lost for him. So we'll have to see how that goes. I was just glad that we got a really interesting and good hunting episode, and old school Sam and Dean. It was pretty enjoyable. So those are my thoughts on the episode. Tell me what you guys think in the comments below. If you liked it, if you didn't like it, if you agree with me, if you disagree with me. Also like and subscribe, and I hope you have a good day.